Well, then maybe let's shift gears here a little bit to a different macro topic that we haven't talked about before. Let's talk about Canadian real estate. We have the election coming up, of course, and by the time this airs, that will be over, so there'll be that factor as well. So yeah, if we could just hear your opinion on that, it'd be good.
Yeah, so you're right. We are in the middle of a campaign cycle here in Canada, or an election cycle, and the housing issue is a very hot topic. It's a huge political issue for all parties in this country. And I guess from a personal standpoint or a valuation standpoint, the stock market to me looks very hot and overvalued, as you mentioned there at the top. But the real estate market looks just as overvalued or hot to me, if not worse. So from a policy maker's point of view, I think that creates a fairly serious problem. If stocks or cryptocurrency goes up by 50% in a year, it doesn't have major ripple effects through everybody living in your economy. It's nice for those who own the assets, but it doesn't have that great of an outcome for those who don't own the assets. So it creates major dislocations in your economy, and that's what's happened. Real estate prices have gone up in a big way. So it means that the country today faces a crisis for renters, would-be homeowners, and for those who have just taken on huge mortgages in order to get into the housing market. So whoever gets elected, they have the joyous job of trying to clean this up. I wouldn't want to try to clean it up, but they'll have to try, and they'll have to figure out some way to get out of the mess, and I'm not sure how they're going to do it.
No kidding. Yeah, it's certainly becoming a bigger issue. So I guess in your opinion, what do you think has driven this then, would you say?
Well, I guess we could make a whole video about that. There seem to be a lot of factors out there to me that have contributed to the current state of Canada's housing market. And I actually wrote an article on that and potential solutions on My Money Moves, my little website. I just figured I'd throw something up there for people who may want to check it out. If I were to narrow it down to the three biggest ones that I think are in play, the first one I'd highlight is the central bank. The policies of the central bank have had a very large impact on asset prices historically and on consumer prices historically, and they're doing it again here. And the two big things are record low interest rates and quantitative easing. And taken together and done together on the scale that they're doing them, it really buoys up the housing market. And then on the municipal level, there's a lot of red tape that is involved in getting projects approved, getting supply on the market, getting buildings actually built. And there's a lot of NIMBYism, a lot of backlash among neighbors when you try to develop a new project in a given neighborhood. So we've had a situation in this country where there's been years of underbuilding relative to population growth, relative to immigration flows. And then the final thing I'd say, the final big thing anyway, is I think the lending standards at Canada's banks are not as prudent as they would be were they bearing the risk of the loans they write. And in general, they don't do that because the loans are underwritten and backstopped by CMHC and taxpayers. So my guess is that if you got rid of that and you told banks, hey, you have to bear the risk of the loans that you write, there would be big changes and lending standards would tighten up.
Yeah, those are all very good points. So in your opinion, what would be the solution to this? I mean, or is there a solution at all?
I guess on those 3 points I just mentioned, with the Bank of Canada, getting rid of quantitative easing would go a long way. To me, it looks like backdoor socialism. It's a government participant acting in a market economy, and it creates distortions. And I would try to get rid of that. There's also a discussion that perhaps could be made around how interest rates are determined and whether real estate factors are properly accounted for in the cost of living, and I would argue they're not. At the municipal level, you could rezone, you could upzone, you could try to create more supply by reducing red tape, and then with CMHC, you could privatize it, and that would help. Obviously, it's not palatable to do that, and all of the things I've just mentioned would be difficult. But if I were an elected official, I think those are the kind of things I would be attempting to do.
Yeah, certainly not a fun task to try to clean up, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I should also mention, I've actually joined a local group here in Victoria called Homes for a Living, which is trying to push local politicians and local city staff and developers to bring more supply onto the market and to try and alleviate the problem here in Victoria. And I'm sure there are many organizations like this throughout the country, because it's becoming quite an issue. It's no longer confined to Vancouver and Toronto. It's everywhere.
Well, good for you. And yeah, it's important that people do get involved in local issues like that. So yeah, that's fantastic.